Hello, fellow mompreneurs. Welcome to the Real Moms Podcast, the go-to space for resilient entrepreneurs who are striving for abundant living. I'm your host, Shay Spitz, a mompreneur and a realtor here in Columbus, Nebraska. Are you a mom juggling the hustle of entrepreneurship, family life, and personal growth? Well, you're in the right place. On this podcast, we dive deep into the real, unfiltered stories of incredible women who are navigating the journey of mompreneurship. We'll celebrate the victories, share practical insights, and acknowledge that it's okay to face challenges along the way. Success isn't about the destination. It's about the journey and the growth we experience as we balance our careers and the chaos of family life. Whether you're a seasoned mompreneur or just starting on this exciting path, join me and our amazing guests as we explore what it truly means to be a resilient entrepreneur striving for abundant living. Get ready for real, raw, and remarkable conversations that will inspire and uplift you. Because here at the Real Moms Podcast, we believe in the power of community, authenticity, and the strength that comes from embracing the journey together. So grab your coffee, find a cozy spot, and let's dive into the world of mompreneurship. This is the Real Moms Podcast, where we celebrate the hustle, honor the struggle, and thrive as resilient entrepreneurs living abundantly. Welcome to another episode of Real Moms Podcast. I like to start every podcast off with a motivational quote, and today's quote is, "When you start doubting yourself, remember how far you've come, remember everything you have faced, all the battles you have won, and all the fears you have overcome." Today, I have Sarah Pavel, who is a dedicated real estate agent with Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate, the Good Life Group, serving the greater Omaha area. A Chicago native with a background in fashion and marketing from Indiana State University, Sarah has over 18 years of experience in sales and customer service. Her passion for real estate, combined with her keen eye for potential and innovative marketing strategies, has earned her numerous accolades, including multiple Better Homes and Gardens Top 1% awards. As a mom of two, Sarah expertly balances her family life with a successful real estate career, focusing on building meaningful relationships and helping clients achieve the good life in Omaha. So Sarah, thank you so much for being here and taking time out of your day. How are you today?
You're welcome. I'm good. I'm excited to be here. I love the idea of the podcast, and I'm honored to be a part of it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So if you're just joining in today, what REAL stands for is Resilient Entrepreneurs and Abundant Living. So here we are talking about how mompreneurs have overcome obstacles and challenges to basically have, I don't want to necessarily say the balanced life, but an abundant life, because we're going to always have those challenges. And Sarah, like we had talked about previously, you've been in the business for 13 years or coming on 13 years. And that's one of your favorite quotes, because sometimes in this business and in this industry, you have to remind yourself that we got to keep going. You've overcome so much and nothing can stop you. So tell me a little bit about your real estate journey and where you started and all of that.
Yep. So I graduated from Indiana State, and after that, I moved to New York to do an internship in fashion. And that's how I got into the wholesale side of the business. So I quickly realized I wasn't ever going to be working in retail or designing clothes or anything like that. So I kind of got molded into the middleman of the wholesale world. And so we basically worked between the fashion designers and then the consumers that bought that design. So I was always working with buying and selling goods. And then I kind of worked all the middle logistics of that world. Each season, a new line gets produced. And so you're constantly working on what's next. And our job was to learn that line, sell that line, get it out to the consumers, and then move on to our new collection. So that's kind of the world I got into in New York. And then when I moved back to Chicago, I worked in high-end fashion for about 5 years before I transitioned into moving to Omaha.
And okay, so a couple of questions I have is, when you say wholesale, I'm thinking real estate wholesale. So you're saying like there's another wholesale in the fashion industry?
Right. And I think that's what helped me intro into the world of real estate, because I had always worked as, so every time you think the dress you're buying off the rack, there's so many steps before that final sale. And so I was basically the back end person working all of the logistics until it gets into the consumer hand. So I think that did help me kind of transition into real estate, because when I moved to Omaha, I was like, what's next? Am I going to still try to pursue this wholesale business? But I quickly realized working in the retail side of the business wasn't for me. I was so used to the back end. And then I quickly realized probably traveling out of Omaha and doing what I had done out of bigger metro cities was not going to be lucrative for me either, or time. I just didn't have the money to fund myself there to get started. So I just got to chatting with someone about real estate, and I was like, maybe I could work the logistics in this industry. And so I just pursued kind of getting into that world by working as an assistant under someone who was in the business. And so I think that helped me work in the industry while I was getting licensed. And so that really helped streamline my transition.
Absolutely. It's interesting because to the consumer, so in the fashion industry, you said that there's a lot of logistics that go into the clothing line before it gets to the rack. Well, the consumer, myself included, you don't think of that. You don't think of what it takes to get that piece of clothing and that item to the rack for sale. And then obviously there's a ton of things after that. But it's kind of like real estate though, too, as an agent, that a lot of people, the consumers especially, it looks, and myself included, before I got into real estate, it's like, okay, well, they put a house on the market, it went under a contract, that was pretty easy. Like it went from active to sold, not a big deal. Well, what most people don't realize is the trend, like between, well, one, getting it to market, getting the house to list it, and then marketing yourself, getting it on the market, and then everything in between once you do get an accepted offer. Because honestly, that's really where the work starts. I mean, obviously there's a lot of legwork up front. And even when you're working with buyers, there's a lot of legwork in prepping buyers. Well, one, finding buyers, prepping them, and then getting them to find the right house. And so, I just remember thinking, oh, that must be pretty easy. There's a list of sellers and there's a list of buyers that I can just pick from. But you got to market yourself. You got to sell yourself, your brand, and work with the right people and the right tribe to help get you where you want to go too. So
so I think, as I said, having the balance of understanding that process from start to finish and being able to coach people. And a lot of people don't see what you do on the back end. So sometimes you try to void out those comments when you see it through social media platforms and stuff, because of your worth and you know how much it takes and how much mental balance it takes to get there. So there's a lot of moving parts. And I think, over the years, I've come to meet what I call my team that kind of helps me get there. And it's really me. And I'm the face of the working with the client and selling real estate, but there's so many moving parts behind it and so many people that help me on the back end too.
Yes.
So,
and your team is so importantly crucial, because I am the vision kind of person. I'm on the face of it. And then I have a team behind me that helps dot the I's, cross the T's, and put all my messes together.
100%.
Yes. I mean, we got to know our strengths and you got to know your weaknesses. I know my weaknesses is dotting the I's and crossing the T's. I remember applying for jobs years and years ago. I'm like, okay, well, everybody wants somebody who's analytical. So I'm going to put that on all of my resumes, that I'm analytical. And I have 100% truly found that I am not analytical. I am not a detail-oriented person. And I 100% know that. I see the bigger vision. I can put the people in the right place to do the right thing, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I can do all the things, because I know I cannot.
And I think the more you're in the industry and get established and are able to leverage some of that out, you realize the importance of it. But that also doesn't come overnight. It's a long time coming of meeting those people and being able to curate, that relationship and being able to pay for it too. So
yes. Yeah, that's the biggest thing, because when you hire, it took me a long time to finally hire somebody, because it eats into your budget and you're like, how am I going to pay them? How am I, all of those things. But in all reality, you got to find the right person. I've always been told, slow to hire, quick to fire. And not that you want to go out there and fire everybody because they're not doing it exactly right, but you train them. But you also need to recognize, like, okay, are they fit for it? And it may not be them, it might be you, whatever. But talk to me about some of the challenges. Before the call, you had told me this is one of your favorite quotes, and being in the industry for almost 13 years, what are some things that you still face, even though you've been in the industry for a very long time? What are some of those negative thoughts, those negative comments, the challenges that you've come across, especially here lately?
Yeah, and this brings me back a time of just like not feeling present. Like I do have a lot of like mom guilt constantly of just the presence. And I think that is because this industry just doesn't shut off. So it's very hard to just navigate that but make sure that you're being present in your current life. And I think with all the success that's come in my career, there was a moment a few years ago where I just felt like I was successful. I was hitting my numbers, everything, but there was something just feeling very unfulfilled in me. So I really kind of had to get to the root of that to excel the next portion of my career. And with that came coaching. And I've never really used like a real estate coach. It's just not who I am. I'm just not a systematic person in the realm of coaching and being told what to do by someone else. But this was more like a life coach. And I think it just really like I had to get to why I felt like that way and how to get that pushed out. And one thing I always learned from my coach was the reset. Every time I felt my head going into a negative space, I would reset, and also figuring out how to delegate and free up my time with making sure that other people can help me. And then when I am with my family, really just trying to be present with them, or making that time to be present with them. I still find myself struggling back and forth. And then I just go, those are things where you go back to that quote, right? You're just like, you're not going to be perfect. You want this business, you're hungry for more. You want those accolades to continue. You want to stay consistent. But I think sometimes you have to realize like, it's okay to shut it down. And my family does remind me of that a lot. And I have hopefully learned, and I think it's always a work in progress, of being able to leverage things now that can free up my time in other places and prioritize and set expectations, so that if you don't set expectations, the business will run you and you won't be running the business. And I had to learn how to do that.
Yeah, expectations and boundaries. You said that you had to find the root of what was causing your unfulfilledness. What would you say was the root cause of that?
As I said, I think it was a lot of being present, not being present. I don't think I could shut work off. It was just mentally always having to do something. There was just never a moment of like, okay, I cannot be thinking real estate. And I think for me, that was really starting to wear on my mental health, because you feel like you can't take time off because it's going to be a lost sale, or your client's not going to wait for you, and then I think I had to be able to accept that it's okay if there's a loss there. Your mental health is more important and you have to take time for you. And so as soon as I started figuring out what brought me my zen and my energy back, I started to see the success come a lot more naturally than forced, in a different way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I don't know the exact quote, but I know it's by Jim Rohn. And he says, if you work harder on yourself than you do at your job, basically that is when you will be successful. Because I think so many people, and my sponsor with EXP, his name is Ken Jocelyn, you'll have to maybe look him up, but his 5 core values are faith, health, relationships, business, and finances. And I had him talking to our Real Moms community yesterday, actually, and he said the reason he starts with those, because those first 3 are the first main things that are extremely important. And even if you don't believe in God, you just need to believe and have faith in a higher power outside of you, because you can't do it all. So you have faith, health, and relationships, because without those 3 things, your business and finances will never thrive successfully. You might be able to do it for a while, 10, 15, 20 years. I know a lot of people who are very successful in business and have been for a very long time. And then now things seem to be crumbling apart because they didn't focus on those first 3 things. Because you want to have your foundation and you build up from there. It's like a pyramid, So you have your faith, health, and relationships. And I know when I'm not focused on my health, everything else seems to crumble. So we are actually starting our what's called Next 60, where you set your next 60-day goals, and focusing on my health and my faith is the number 1. And then building those relationships, strengthening the relationships that I have now. And then obviously I have goals for my business and finances as well. But I would agree. Yeah. It comes to your personal life and your health. And I know what you mean. You just can't seem to get away with work, even though you're with your family and your kids, but work is still there. You're not mentally present. You're physically present, but not mentally.
Right. And I think you do have to figure out the systems that work for you. I think even when you're first in this industry or constantly being pressured with change, not everyone's going to be systematic. Not everyone is going to want to be a social media influencer. Not everyone is going to run their business the same way. And I think I learned to accept simplifying my business and sticking with what works than always feeling like, wow, I really need to get into my CRM and use this as like a well-oiled machine. And then I'm like, I'm never going to do that. Like, I'm never going to get all the birthday pop buys out. So I think you have to learn how to say, okay, this is what works for me. This is what doesn't. And that's okay, because a lot of people coming in this industry just want all these things in place immediately, and it comes with so much time. And so a big part of that coaching and moving forward was obviously finding the right people to leverage what I needed, and then being able to simplify what works for us and what doesn't, and not creating so much pressure on myself to do it like someone else was doing it. You would see some people coach, and that came with a lot of not maybe going to every teaching class, because that would cause me to be overwhelmed and feel like I needed to be doing it that way. And then I think I came to reality. It was like, that's just not me. It's never going to be me. So it's just not a part of my business I need to focus on. So learning how to do that was very key, and working with someone that can help you create simple. I'm all about simple. I have a lot of links that go out, and it simplifies everything for me. So I'm just, stick to what works for you, and don't try to overwhelm yourself with too many different things at once.
Yeah. My attorney always tells me, Shay, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. That's what he always tells me. He's so simple though. Like, he just loves the super simple life, which is great. But I want a little bit more like diversity and growth and all of that. But so he does kind of have to bring me back a little bit. And going back to what you said about the reset, when you make changes can be very difficult. And I don't necessarily want to say hard, but they are. Changes are hard, whether you're changing a brokerage, whether you're changing the industry, what we have going on here in our industry world. And you have to adapt to those changes. But one thing that I've learned over the changes that I've had over the past several years is going back to the basics. What can you do? Stop trying to overcomplicate everything, because we all want to get super creative, and like, social media is not my thing. And I try certain things here and there, but I've found that I'm not good at social media. Like, I'm not good at, and it's fine. I do have somebody else who helps run it, but overall, like, I'm not a social media fan. And sitting on social media and figuring out what's trending and the music and whatever else, I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy it. And I need to be able to
And that has always been a trigger for me, because obviously we've been in the business to a point where when we were in the business, we were not taught that you need to constantly be posting content and posting about you, your family. Like, think about this industry and you're already disconnected from the people you love so much because of the workload. Like, I was like, gosh, it's just not me. Like, how much pressure do you put on yourself for that? So I think also simplifying that, finding someone to maybe like find a balance on there, but understanding I'm the same way. Like, for me, social media is not where I seek to get my business. I think having a presence on there is important, but we keep it so minimal that I don't try to focus my energy on that as much. And my family just doesn't want to be videoed all the time. I don't want to be constantly documenting myself when I work out or this. I mean, I'm a private person and I don't want to expose my family to that when there's already so much that they have to sacrifice for me to be able to do what I do. And that's just not something I'm willing to compromise on. So that's hard. That's definitely, the more people tell you, I mean, you go to so many seminars and they just put so much pressure on you to run a YouTube channel and to run this and be this and do this, a TikToker and all this. And for me, I'm selling someone's most important asset and financial commitment in their life. Like, that to me is the low priority. Going back to the basics, just the newsletters or building the client referral relationships. Mm-hmm. We focus a lot on that. And I've luckily been able to hire a copywriter over the years. But focusing on like just a streamline where we focus on newsletter, we focus on client events, we focus on, and we just do 2 a year. It's just like, but 2 of those we focus on, maybe not. I thought maybe I would be the type of person that would do monthly pop buys. And then I realized this is not doable for me. So just doing the touch points in other ways of sending monthly mailers and promoting other small businesses through those platforms. I just had someone reach out to me that owns a cat hotel now. And they were like, we get your newsletter and we would love to be featured in your newsletter. And we do that for free. Like, we're not charging these businesses, but the fact that people will come to me and say, hey, could we be that? And I'm like, a cat hotel is perfect for real estate because we all need somewhere to put our pets when we travel. Yeah. So sometimes that stuff comes naturally when you do the things that work for you and don't pressure yourself so much on doing the things you don't like.
One thing that I learned in business early on, a couple different things actually, is if you help others get where they want to go, you will get where you want to go. And that's really why I started this. That sounds terrible. That sounds selfish. And I don't mean it to sound that way. But I mean, I love to help other people. If I can help people figure out, like, changing things a little bit. So like my marketing lady and who does photography, her and I said, send me over your updated pricing, because she's honestly too cheap. She's too cheap. And she is like the one who does all the real estate stuff in this area. And I said, send me over your pricing. And because I told her, I said, you need to increase your pricing. I know that's to me, but you need to increase your pricing. And so she sent it over to me and I looked it over. I said, okay, now add $25 to these ones and $50 to that. And she's like, I don't know if I can. I'm like, you're going to. Like, you're way too cheap. You need to know your worth. And she did. And she was nervous when she sent out her very first invoice. And it's still cheaper than what most people would pay in other places. You know what I mean? But I mean, just changes like that. I told somebody else, she's like, I'll get you my next 60 goals by Monday. And then yesterday I said, okay, on Friday, I want it by Friday. She's like, dang it. And so I texted her this morning. I said, you know what? I want them today. I want you to send me your next 60-day goals, because action creates action. Inaction creates inaction. And analysis paralysis. She's like, I really want to take time to think about this. No, just get started. Just start doing it. And you can add to it as we go if you want, you know what I mean? But just get out there. I say Nike said it best, just do it. Because that is where so many people fail, is they overanalyze. They're way too analytical to try to figure out putting the right pieces in place. but they're not even taking the action. I don't care. That's so funny. I noticed myself doing this. I'm like, okay, I need to text somebody or text this specific person. I'm like, oh my gosh, what is their name? I just start typing and then it'll come to me. I'm like, oh no, that's not what their name starts with. This is what it is. But it's the funniest thing. Like, I know that sounds silly, but like, have you ever done that where you're like, oh, I need to get back to this person. I can't remember what their name is. So you
Yeah.
I do it all the time. And so I'm like, okay. And I just start typing. I'm like, nope, their name starts with this. And I finally remember it. But I'm like, that's just me taking action. Because otherwise, if I sit here and try to think of what their name is, then I feel like I'm just going to procrastinate it. So I caught myself the last couple of days. I just start typing. And I'm like, oh no, their name doesn't start with an E. It starts with a D. Like,
yeah. And that shows that you're really like a client advocate, or you're paying attention to their needs and because that idea comes to you and then they mold back to you. And I think that's an important part of our industry. It's not about us, but it's about allowing our clients to make that presence with us, that like when there's some familiarity or you're thinking of them or something, if you're like, this is them, that you're instantly, have to connect, and then it just all comes back to you. Because obviously, I mean, I can be terrible with names too.
Oh yeah,
but then we just finding that familiarity or something, and then just being able to connect with that person on that level. I think that's huge. And personal notes have always been, I think, a good way of doing that too. And I use social media for things like that. I try to make sure my clients are just keeping me top of mind. And in the same way, like, I'm keeping them top of mind that way too. So when they have a life-changing event, just somehow acknowledging it, whether it be you're messaging them through Facebook or you're writing a handwritten note, which I think it always goes a really long way. And just remembering that handwritten note is not about real estate. It's about a genuine, I really am happy for you guys and wanted to express that for you. So I love when I send out baby onesies, like when people are having babies. I obviously can't keep track of everyone, but like if I do see them through online stuff, I'm like, oh, we're going to instantly get that baby onesie, that future homeowner onesie out. And little things like that just excite people. And
that you're thinking of them, that you took the time to go pick it up, order it, mail it. I mean, that's even like a handwritten letter. If people take the time to mail a handwritten letter, like that says a lot. Mm-hmm. I always do handwritten letters for every single closing. I do a handwritten one, thanking them, congratulating them. But yeah, I mean, those are so important. And a lot of times, like if somebody just pops into my head for no reason, I'm like, okay, I'm going to send them a text. Like, hey, just thought of you today. Hope you have a great day. I don't know why. It doesn't even necessarily need to be a client. I do that for friends and family. They just, for some reason, they popped into my head. So God is saying, hey.
I love that. Mm-hmm.
So I wish on iPhones that you could pre-schedule text messages. Like, hey, I'm going to put this in here and it's going to go out at this time, because all of my thinking happens really early in the morning or later at night. So if I could just like pre-schedule a text and not a reminder, like, hey, nope, this is what I'm texting out. I'm going to set it to go out tomorrow at 8:15 tomorrow. I wish I had that. I don't have that. It would be very beneficial. So
yeah, that would be beneficial.
Yes. So tell me, what are some challenges that you have faced as a real estate agent and a mompreneur over the years? I know you talked about being present, but when you got into the industry, I mean, did you face any hurdles or relationship struggles? Because I know we did when I jumped into the industry.
Yes, definitely. I mean, when I first got into the industry, obviously I didn't have kids. So I was a super go-getter. Like I would take on anything and everything. I would put myself in the weirdest situations. And like, you just don't even think. You're just so hungry for everything that you just don't slow down. And when I came into Better Homes, I learned how to curate some of that referral business better. But when I was I've definitely had marriage struggles, like with just the time. And like, I think you have to learn not to always bring work home with you. I do find myself like my mood can shift quickly from like an instant thing that changes with you'll just see someone's disgruntled or there's a problem. And like, if I can find that will change my mind and how I interact with my family fairly quickly. So I think I have to recognize that. I think we just really had to understand I had to understand that my family and my husband have priorities too. They're just not always mine. My husband worked for a lawn care company for a long time. And like just the hours were just stressful for us. He was working till 7. I was working till 7. I mean, we just weren't getting anywhere. So I think we just had to find like, okay, how can we make our marriage work? So, and I think assigning like kind of just like your responsibilities and mine help. We know that I usually go to the gym in the morning and I get home and I'm the one that preps the kids for school, gets breakfast on the table while my husband's getting ready for work. And then we know that, my husband will take the kids off to school. I know that my husband structures his schedule to end at 4:30 to get the kids. So I'm not constantly he kind of works his schedule around mine, which I'm very blessed to have. But there were definitely times where he was just like, I just don't want to hear the word real estate. I don't want to hear like talk about real estate. Like, I think sometimes in this industry, when you're with friends, people want to talk about it all the time. And that was one thing where I had to be like, we just can't do that because for him, it just was such a trigger. It's like, I have to live, eat, breathe this every day. Like, I don't want to be talking about this when we're with our friends. So turning it off is huge, and just respecting their time too, because I do find myself prioritizing myself. And I think I had to deep dive in making sure they're prioritized too. I've been lucky to have a lot of help with my mom, but if you don't have the help with someone else, I mean, you kind of have to find someone you can't always expect that everyone's going to run on your schedule, because when you do, there's going to be tension.
Oh yeah.
And definitely have gone through our hurdles in that, and just kind of working through it and working through the triggers and getting those voided out of our life. So,
and I really think that and sometimes it happens, but really figuring out what's going to work for your husband, what his roles are, what your roles are, has really been a game changer. I remember my husband and I, we did like couples counseling therapy. Not that we were struggling necessarily, but I felt overloaded, because one of my biggest triggers, I guess, is anytime my husband wanted to go on all of these business trips with me. Great. Fantastic. I want you to be there. But what stressed me out is when we did that, I'm the one booking the hotel. I'm the one getting the tickets. I'm the one booking the flights. I'm the one making sure that the kids are all squared away. You have the list, who's taking them where, who's taking them to school, events, activities, all of those things. I'm also taking care of the dogs. I'm also packing the kids' clothes. All my husband has to do is just show up and get his stuff ready. So I almost had a lot of resentment towards him because I was so frustrated. I'm like, okay, if you want to come, then you got to figure this out. So there's a couple different times I'm like, great, I want you to be there, but now you got to figure out where the kids are going to go. Now, he did a great job. He didn't do terrible, but I did have to step in and help out with a few things. But we were doing this couples counseling, and she said, you guys need to figure out when you're going to be going on a trip, what his job is and what yours are. And so that was one thing that we talked about. And she's like, Shay, what is one thing that when you guys go on a trip that he can take care of? And I said, honestly, a place for the dogs. That was my biggest, that sounds so simple. I said, but if you can just figure out where to take the dogs, and if they need to be updated on shots, you'll take them to get their shots updated, the Bordetella, if we're boarding them, whatever. I said, just take care of the dogs. I can handle the rest. And that was a big thing. And our morning routines have been kind of similar to that. Like we just kind of have it all figured out, but it just happened naturally. He takes care of the yard work. He mainly cooks. I'll cook once in a while, but I'm buying the groceries. I'm ordering the groceries. And so it kind of can happen naturally, but you also need to have that transparency is like, I need help. Because otherwise you start getting resentment against each other. You expect them to know what you need help with, but men are very simple human beings.
Understanding roles is huge. We try never to fight about money. I think too, in real estate, when you're successful, you're hungry for more and you're doing well. But I think you also have to appreciate what your partner's doing they're taking a step back to allow your success. And I think you have to learn how to appreciate that. So one thing we learned, we just don't fight about money.
Yeah.
We understand the importance of our role, because even though my husband can take on what some people say are the mom role, like, which I definitely, sometimes you're sad. You're like, okay, I wish I had that more, but like, I appreciate that. I know how much work that is for him. And so it's almost harder sometimes for that role than my role. So just being appreciative of like how much he takes on with the kids. And I think understand, as I said, establishing those roles and then giving ourselves me time. I think we both have understood like we both need Zen time. And so I find a lot of Zen in going to see music, or we both like traveling to see music a lot. So sometimes he'll go away for a weekend and do him, and I'll do me. And we understand that mental clarity is needed. So, he'll take on the role of the kids, and then we'll do a trade-off. And that's worked for us. And people will say, oh, you're traveling and doing all this and seeing all this. I mean, we just found something that really worked for us and our marriage, and having that time to just spend giving each other to do what we like to do helps a lot. So that has been a game changer too over the past 2 years. I feel like that has really like improved my energy and just focusing on my health and gym and like making time for those things, because when you're running on other people's schedule and not letting people run on your schedule, you don't do any of that stuff for yourself. Yeah. And that's where you start to kind of spiral.
That did give me chills, because I think it's so important to let your significant other know that you appreciate them when they're taking a step back, maybe in their business, to let you thrive. They're taking on the more mom roles, which I guess I think it's becoming more common nowadays, but it is so important to let your partner know how much you appreciate them. And I actually started writing notes, I would say the last like 2 years. Once in a while, not all the time, I'll just write little notes and I'll stick it in his book, or I'll put it on his computer, or I'll put it in his desk. And so that way he doesn't know that I'm writing them until it could be a week later that he finds.
I love that.
Or maybe a month. And it's actually funny. So he was writing his to-do list. So in his to-do list, there's like 3 or 4 different sentences. I just wrote in there a few different things in between what he had to do. And one of them was like, tell your wife how amazing she is and how much you love her. Another one was schedule a time to go on a date with your wife. He hasn't done that one yet, but it was funny. So I did that the other day, and then I got a text from him in the afternoon, and he said, Shay, I just want to let you know how amazing you are. And all that you do, because it's exactly what I put in his little note thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, that just came out of nowhere. You're so sweet. I mean, but it was just having little fun things like that. It was pretty comical in all reality, but it was just putting, and I found another one because he struggles with his business too. But I wrote him a note not too long ago, just telling him how proud I am of him, that I want him to keep going, to keep believing in himself, and to not give up. And it's a pretty long note. And I noticed though that he actually uses that as his bookmarker when he's reading his books. So just those little things can make a huge difference in somebody's life.
Yeah, I love that. I love just, as I said, you've got to appreciate the roles. And if you don't establish that, and that's why I said a lot of moms come in and they're like, we just want the free time. And like, gosh, in my eyes, like there were so many times where I missed with my kids. And now with them starting more sports and stuff, I really try to like be at those games. Yes, there are some times where I'm just going to miss it. We work on deadlines. My husband knows when I'm in negotiations, like, don't get in Sarah's bubble. You just know, like, she's in negotiations, and like we work on strict deadlines, and not everyone realizes that we are not in a position to not respond. And sometimes I still struggle with that, or trying to remind people, like, I can't just ignore it, because if you ignored it, you wouldn't be where you're at. People are looking for responses, but I think the more that you can set expectations, the less people are needing constant. Because if you start texting with a client, and like, I mean, you just have to sometimes like set all those expectations on the timeline. Otherwise, it's never going to turn off. It's just a constant. And then you're going to take that client's emotion and it's going to reflect on you. And then that emotion is going to reflect on the family. And at that moment, you're just like, okay, I got to reset here. And,
well, and it's interesting that you say that because, I try not to text people after 8 and before 8. Like, that's just no. But I remember meeting with a client, and one of the reasons they said that they decided not to go with this other agent who they were previously talking to before they started talking to me is that they said that this particular agent was texting them at 11 o'clock at night and 6 o'clock in the morning. And they're like, we don't want to be, they were trying to sell their house. So, you would think that's a top priority, but they're like, I don't want to be texted at 11:30 at night. I don't want to be texted at 6 a.m. So it's not, yes, you're going to have clients who want all hours of your time, but one, you have to set your own boundaries, but two, they have a personal life too. They may not want to be contacted that late or that early, which is why I wish we had there's so many things that I feel like I'm going to forget if I don't do it right now. But you just learn to roll with it. But, they have a personal life too, and they're not going to always want to be contacted on all hours of the day. And you have to respect their boundaries too.
Yeah. And I think I've learned to do that too. You don't start business, or you try not to start business unless there's an emergency. And then, at some point you're like, okay, it can wait till the following business day. There's nothing right now besides causing stress on me, causing stress on you in this moment that we can't pick up right back in the morning. So you have to remember that, because I remember when I would work a lot of internet leads in the business, and I just would be constantly just like, I never ever shut it off. And it was just like, oh my God. And it becomes overwhelming.
It's just a lot more stress. But well, obviously, Sarah, we could talk all day. I think you and I have a lot in common. I think we think the same way for the most part. But what is one piece of advice that you could give somebody who's just getting into business, or maybe even the younger version of yourself?
Yeah. So my one piece of advice is, don't feel like everything is going to come overnight. Like, a lot of the things in the systems take time. But really, when you're coming into the industry, I think the most important thing off the bat is to be curating the relationships and making sales. Everything else will fall into place. But the moment that you're like, I need to do this and this and have all these things set up, that came in like 7 years of the business. And I just remember, it's not going to happen overnight. Like, you're going to have to work to get it. And as you become more successful, you have more of those funds that you can start implementing those things. But keep it simple and focus on the sales more than anything, because if you get too distracted with everything else, you're not going to be doing your job. You're not going to be making the sales. You're going to be so focused on making content that you're not getting out there and doing what you need to do. So that would be, and then find your Zen, find that moment that you can disconnect. Mine is definitely going to see music, where that moment where you can just shut your phone off and not touch it for 3 to 4 hours. I think find your Zen, whatever it may be, the moment that you can detach yourself from work altogether. And that's super important for your health and your mental clarity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for being here and sharing all of your 13 plus years of experience. If anybody wanted to get a hold of you, I know you're in the Omaha area, how can they get in touch?
Yeah, so I have a website, smpavelrealtor.com. That's got all my content information, more about myself and my experience in the industry. But typically emailing me or texting me. I'm a texter. Texting me is good. And I'm always happy to provide coaching advice and whatever questions you have. I know sometimes it's important to have someone to connect with on a question. I'm always happy to help. So
what's your phone number?
Me. It's 402-830-2879.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah. And I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm honored. As I said, I love the idea behind the podcast and it keep doing great things.
Awesome. Well, you have a wonderful day.
Okay, bye-bye.
And that wraps up another inspiring episode of the Real Moms Podcast. A huge thank you to our incredible guests for sharing their story and insights today. If you found value in today's conversation, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And hey, sharing is caring, right? Share this podcast with your fellow mompreneurs, friends, and anyone who you feel could use a dose of inspiration. Share it on your social media as well. But most importantly, if you found this episode helpful, please leave me a 5-star review. This helps get our information out to those who have never heard or seen us before. Are you feeling inspired and you're sure that you could add some value to the podcast? Shoot me a message and let's talk. We love hearing from you. So connect with us on social media. Tag me at Shay J Spitz. That's ShaeJSpitz. And share your thoughts and takeaways, or even suggest topics you'd like to have us explore more in the future episodes. Remember, you're not alone on this journey. Your resilience is your strength, and your pursuit of abundant living is truly remarkable. As always, keep thriving, keep growing, and keep embracing the beautiful chaos of being a mompreneur. Until next time, take care, stay real, and keep living abundantly.